Business as Unusual is a thought-provoking podcast that explores the innovative strategies, disruptive ideas, and unconventional practices driving successful leaders and companies in the ever-evolving world of modern business. Subscribe, comment, and share for weekly inspiration with our host, Aicila.
All right, welcome to Business as Unusual. I'm here today with Greg Wasserman, and Greg is a cast magician. So if you're all curious about how to be a cast magician, I think that will come out during our chat. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Hey, it's a pleasure always to be here and always talking with you. I look forward to sharing this conversation with the audience.
Me too. So I met Greg through a podcast software that I use called Cast Magic, and they are a very unusual business. They have a strong community that I feel sort of rose up when I think when I joined Cast Magic's community, there were only a few hundred people, and now it's like at 1,300 and then Slack community.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. It's a place I really appreciate because there's so much interaction. And part of how I got to know Greg is he's a very interactive person in community. Like he reached out, he said hello. And some people don't interact a lot. I'm kind of not totally a lurker, but a little bit. But I still feel very welcome there. And one of the things that I appreciate, so it's not your company per se, but they brought you on to do this piece. And can you talk a little bit about how that showed up and why you were interested in that in the first place?
So I guess to answer that, we go back to the backstory of Greg in that regards. I live on LinkedIn. My background is in media, and I've done partnerships for the last few years. But in the last 4 years, I ran 3 podcast listening platforms, and that really dove me deep into the podcasting space. When you're running a podcast listening platform, your job is truly to help podcasters answer the 3 questions that they all have. How do I get more distribution? How do I grow my audience? And how do I make money? How do I monetize? And I'm like, well, imagine if Instagram called you and said, look, you have a show. It's on our platform. How do I help you grow? Whether you take my advice or you don't, I got 4 million other shows that will take it, and they will grow and you won't, and you'll grow other ways. Totally up to you. And so part of that, seeing those 3 questions always come up, I didn't understand why podcasters are so focused on just downloads. When a podcast gives you all this great content, I will never listen to all of it, and I work in podcasting, but I could follow you on your social promotions. I can read your blog, go to your website, get engagement there, read your newsletter. I could still have all these touch points with you without actually having to listen to your show and still engage with brand you. And so when I left there, I was trying to figure out how to do that consulting wise because there's so much of an opportunity. Every Monday, I post 3 podcasts I think people should listen to on my LinkedIn. Happen to have done the founders of Cast Magic's original show, the reason they built Cast Magic, DTC Pod. And then 2 months later, they hadn't even built the product. A few months later, they hit me up. They're like, hey, you seem to know a lot about podcasting. Can we talk to you? We built this product. And I'm like, yes, this is what I've been preaching for everyone to be doing. So it's just a natural alignment, but it actually goes to show the value of what my ethos is. Life is about time and relationships. You have no clue where a conversation today will lead in the future. No clue where that post in December was going to lead me to a job opportunity in February that I can now say I love what I do.
It's really obvious as someone who has benefited from the way that you engage. You definitely show up in a way that doesn't feel like you're checking a box for sure, which I appreciate as a person who uses Cast Magic. And one of the things that you said once that I really appreciated as a podcaster was a lot of podcasters really focus on Apple and Spotify instead of all of these other platforms. Would you be willing to talk about that a little bit? I think it's useful information for folks.
100%. I mean, that's exactly what I was talking about. You guys, if you look at the top 5 platforms, so take Apple, Amazon, Spotify, iHeart, and I'm blanking on Sirius's platform. It's about 70% of the overall market. That means you're missing about 30% of the market. And as every podcaster wants, they want more listens. So why would you just focus on 70% when it's free to distribute your show to the other 30%? You just have to do a little manual work, or your hosting company allows you to do that. And they've already set it up. That's part of what my job was at my last company. Work with a hosting company, say, hey, the person submits your show to this hosting company. They want to distribute it to all these platforms. There we go. So it's a little manual work, but it's free to reach all these audiences. And the key part about it, you can be a small fish in a big pond. So try to be an Apple because they're so big. Try and reach your numbers there and get chartered and so forth. Or you can be on a smaller one like my company. We were a Player FM with 2 million monthly active users. Small in that scale, but that means those 2 million people were dedicated to that platform. They were interested in podcasting in the way that we were able to give it to them from the certain controls that the company had built. Well, wouldn't I want to be charted on that platform and be like, I've got the most users because they're interested in a specific use case beyond just what Apple gives them? And then we had people all the time said, like, we chart as a top, embroidery podcast, maybe that's their category, on Listen Notes or Player FM or whatever it is. Like, no one cares about the charts. Like, oh, you're an Apple. Most people actually, when you think about it, we all know it's if you're on the top in the Apple charts, the top of the Spotify charts, does that mean you're the best show? Does that mean the best? No, like you just got some marketing behind it. You've put some effort behind it. But if you're the best in a smaller platform, that's probably where people are like, oh, maybe those are people like me because it's a unique, different kind of environment. So there's so many different ways you can think about it. At the end of the day, it's free to get you in all these platforms.
Mm-hmm. So I love podcasts for honestly reasons that I couldn't explain. It's the same reason I love Minions. It's just something I love. However, I also know they are a huge market area and a new opportunity for people to reach new audiences. As someone who's worked in podcasting in a variety of sectors, what do you think podcasting offers that is uniquely beneficial to the small business owner?
Where do I start? Specifically for the small business, but I think I would take this to anyone, anywhere. It allows you to have an authentic conversation that you're probably going to have anyways, record that, and then use that conversation as your entire content engine. So I can now take this as a conversation as a point, record this. You can chop this up. We can extract what both of us said. We can turn that into a blog, to newsletter. You're able to reach out to a person. Imagine you wanted to just go, hey, I would love to talk to you. And the person's like, I don't have time for this. Hey, I would love to talk to you. And what do you know? I'm going to record this and I've got a podcast. Most people aren't going to say, well, how big's your reach? Because they're already assuming like, all right, if you have a podcast, that means you're at least giving me a platform. That's at least 10 other people maybe that are going to hear my conversation and going to hear me. Like most people don't unless they're on the higher echelon. So now you're able to have a conversation and get content from it that could support you and your thought leadership. You can monetize that, and also supports the guest in some regards, depending on how you look at it. So like there's 20 plus ways to monetize a podcast well beyond just downloads. And so from a small business standpoint, you now can think about who's going to be a guest on your show. Will they be a potential client? So you can now start using your show for getting prospecting and leveraging that to get new clients. You can build your brand. You can start being a thought leader. You can build your audience from social, blog, newsletter. You're building out your SEO on your website. Like there's so many reasons to have it. That's why I would say just set it up, spend the time. As you know, as a entrepreneur, like there's time involved, but the benefit of it is worth it, especially if you play the long game. If you're going to go, I need to make money in year one, why am I not making money after a couple episodes? It's also why most people stop. So think about less about the money you're making from direct sponsorship or ads and thinking that way, but go, how can I make business money through a podcast?
Who do you feel like does the best with Cast Magic? Do you think it is podcasters? I know you have a lot of use cases now. Well, Cast Magic started for podcasts in the 6 months that I've been using it. I feel like it went from podcasts to sort of everything. Is there an industry or is it more of an attitude that you think is the most effective?
Well, I guess to answer that, let's bring everyone in. What is Cast Magic? Cast Magic is a platform that allows you to take any audio and video and repurpose it. And the way I like to think about repurposing, it's not just a matter of taking your podcast and create it as a social promotion and blog and newsletter, but also how do I take this dense conversation, this dense media file, and extract knowledge from it and repurpose it that way. So it started off because the founders had a podcast. They're like, as you know, it takes a lot of work to think of titles, show notes, timestamps.
Mm-hmm.
They build a platform, Cast Magic, that does all of that in minutes. And then you can start asking anything else you would want to extract from it. Well, if their use case was they have a podcast, but they're like everyone else, they also have a business. They were doing all these other things. They're running meetings. They have thoughts that they want to extract from. There's other pieces of content that they get for inspiration. So pretty quickly, we saw that while it's built for podcasters, others started setting up spaces for different use cases. So there's one that someone set up. He was running a call center for a auto dealership, sales and customer support. And so he set up a space to basically take his recordings from his sales team and his support team. And instead of going through and listening to the half-hour conversation and rubric, he just set up a space going like, all right, this is now going to pull all the answers that I would have to do, save me the time. So now you've got a sales standpoint. Meetings, I don't know about you, but sometimes I say something smart and I'm like, I wish someone wrote that down. And then I'll ask, like, who wrote that down? That was good. And I know the person I'm talking to heard me, but it always happens. Like, I can't regurgitate exactly what you just said. And then I can't remember what I said. So you can record that. So we've got an entire meeting space to think about. Let's just record it and we'll figure out what we do afterwards. Coaches are a great use case. You're like, all right, let's record this coaching call and then give my client going, hey, here's a worksheet. Here's content that comes out of it for you to walk away with. So there's so many different use cases. We're seeing the sky's the limit in terms of just who wants to extract insights or content to repurpose from those audio video.
I feel like all of that is really spot on. And I find that I like tools like this because I'm not at a point where I'm ready to hire someone that I don't feel like I have things set up in a way that I would be able to consistently guarantee them what I would want, right? And so being able to say I can preserve my time by using a tool like this as I continue to build that infrastructure and those possibilities to get to that point. And also when I hire someone, I could hire someone who's doing, I think, higher level stuff, because while this is a useful and important task, it is something that can be automated with some attention. And it's just like you were talking about a podcast, like everything requires some input, some attention, some setup. There's no, what do you call it? Magic fairy dust, I guess, who just makes all the work happen. But it is a little bit magic. It's cast magic even.
Well, there we go. I mean, but yeah, is back to your point about solopreneurs and small businesses, like there's not enough hours in the day. And so everyone's struggling to figure out, how do I get everything I need to do done? So everyone's working harder instead of smarter. And so then you use technology like a tool like Cast Magic to make your life easier, save you time, put out the content that you never would have been thinking about doing because you're like, I don't have the time to do this. And that ultimately plays the volume game. The more content you're putting out there, the more people can see you, which means you're getting recognition, which means you're building a brand voice, which means you're ultimately making more money because people now know you.
I want to point out something I've appreciated about the way that you show up as the representative of Cast Magic is it's something you spoke earlier about, that life it's about time and relationships. And it's interesting because I feel like there's a lot of AI conversation that's afraid of this kind of automation. And we talked about it in a workshop we did where I said, I really see it like a calculator. Yes, I can sit down and do the long math. And I know how, or at least I did at some point, but mostly I use a calculator these days or, my computer or whatever. And similarly, I used to do this and listen to the podcast and pull the quotes. And I still have to, like I said, do a little bit, but there's that, it pulls it out. And I think that helping people to see that it's actually the opposite of the fear. It's not about getting rid of people. It's about giving people more opportunity to connect authentically with one another, because they don't have to spend as much time in busy work that they can offload onto a program like this.
I 100% agree. I mean, if you can if you can focus more on strategy and execution and less on the busy work, I think that's what most people would want. That's also the challenge, because some people are like, no, I'm good at the busy work, and this now AI and technology usually take away some of the busy work, or it transitions where that busy work is. Like, all right, I can set up Cast Magic and have it pull everything, but I still need to have someone go in there, make sure, clean it up. It's AI, so there's still not going to be 100% what you need. You're still going to put your spin on things. But if I could go ahead and create 20 pieces of content, just as an example, and then edit those, instead of creating 20 pieces of content, I just edit 20 pieces of content, that would make my life, especially me, a lot easier. I'm like, all right, I couldn't imagine writing all these pieces of content. You know what? Let's have technology do that for me. My words, my thoughts, organize. Now I just have to edit it so it sounds even more like I want it to sound before I hit publish.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so that, I feel like that humanizing aspect is something that gets left out in the AI conversation. And also the reality that, like you said, there's still going to be some busy work. You're still going to be, and I don't like saying it in a way that makes it sound like it's not important, but there's still some of that stuff that is less of that creativity and strategy piece that I feel like a lot of those solopreneurs are really more excited about. And it gives them space to focus there, but they still need someone to double check the facts, make sure it sounds right, whether it's them or an admin. So your point is, I think, really well taken. And I, like I said, I love Cast Magic. I feel like I told Greg at one point, I was like, I made a really good friend in the Cast Magic community. It was just like, that's kind of like the Slack community is really that open and sharing. And I actually find the podcast community in general is very supportive, which I've always appreciated.
I mean, that's what brought me to it. Like, that's what kept me in it. So when I left my last job, I'm like, everyone's like, why don't you go back and sell podcast ads? I'm like, my media days are over. I want to stay in podcasting, but I don't want to go ahead and sell ads. So how do I stay within it? Because the community is incredible. I mean, it truly is. Podcast community is what everyone's known. It's a very vulnerable space. So for me, that's why I also try and create that with the Cast Magic Slack community. It's like, how do I introduce people? And so if I think about like the small business person, you don't have enough time, you need help, but not like a full-time person. Well, great. We got 1,300 people that are using this tool in there. I have to imagine there's some overlap. So could we find a person that helps 3 of us use one tool and it manages it? Like now we're bridging the gap of you're not alone, you're with other people, and you can make friends to go like, I trust you and I trust this person, and I know how to run my company. Like those are all the things you should be thinking about and leaning into that kind of discomfort of like technology, but also community.
Yeah, I love that. So how do you define success for you as Greg Wasserman and or for Cast Magic? I kind of want both, if I'm being honest, and I'll accept either one.
It's funny you asked that. If you asked me that 20 plus years ago, my thought of answering was I am, in a sense, better than my parents. If they worked so hard to give me the life they gave me, therefore success is I've gone above them. I've made more money. I've made more financial gains, like whatever it was. And so that was how I viewed it, which makes it which basically broke me, because you're like, all right, you're putting a view, especially as we know my generation is not going to be as good as the boomers. Like there's just a disconnect there. So the way I look at it now, I haven't fully defined it. I think it's more around joy. Like what makes me happy? It's not so much the financial success. If I know I'm doing a good job, everything else will align. So if I'm doing the job that I like, that brings me joy, which this truly does. Like I wake up every day excited to help small businesses understand how to repurpose content, give them ideas. So from a Cast Magic standpoint, define success. I mean, just keep growing. I think Blaine just posted something about what we've done in the first year today, which is incredible. And he's our co-founder. So to continue to grow the community, to continue to grow the product, as we know, we are product-led, but we're community-led. You guys are ultimately dictating what's happening, to stay in forefront of where technology is going, so that someone else doesn't come along and say like, oh, we are the next Cast Magic and they don't need us. So it's continue to find those pieces. But for me, yeah, it's success is being aligned. And I think I'm truly aligned right now, which is great.
That is a great definition. I love it. I had to go look it up. I've been with Cast Magic since May of last year.
Coming up in a year. There you go.
So do you have any advice that you feel has influenced the way you approach your work that you would love to share with people?
Life is about time and relationships. You have no clue where one conversation today will lead you in the future. If you truly believe that, you will make the time, not because it serves you now, but because you don't know where it serves you, and you truly believe connection is there. And the way I look at that is, take you for an example. I had a conversation with another magician who's in the hemp industry, and you happened to tell me you had a client in that industry, and I'm like, oh, great. Well, here's two people I can connect. And just by being open to those conversations, being open to the connections, you bring people together. Like, how could you not ask for anything better? Since my role and my roles in the last few years have been in partnerships, partnership mentality is there's a there, let's explore it. I don't know if we've got something now or if I can introduce you to someone, but it's a give to get mentality. So if I keep giving and go like, talk to me. What are you trying to solve? What are you trying to do? Whether I can serve you or not, maybe I know someone that can. And that way I'm able to give you value. So if your business is you're a CPA, well, how could you ultimately need new clients for your CPA business? But who could you connect with over the conversation you're having, whether they hire you or not? Could you go like, well, I'm not a good fit for you, or I get it, you're not going to hire me, but I think you should, based on what you're doing or your business, I know someone. That creates trust, that creates connection, that creates human engagement. Like, why wouldn't you want that from a standpoint? Like, that will then come back to you in a very positive way, I believe, at least.
Well, I feel like what I'm hearing from you and what I've observed in the Cast Magic community is this. It's very much, I like to call it pro-social as opposed to anti-social, and it's community oriented. It's about recognizing that while we need to watch out for ourselves, that's part of it. Watching out for ourselves is also watching out for our community. Like we want to make sure it's not enough that someone I knew a long time ago rewrote this business saying, it's not enough that I succeed, others must also succeed. And it really does feel like a good balance, I guess, to be in, to recognize that we are kind of all in this together. Like life is a team sport, right?
I mean, what is it? Right? I always say rising tide raises all ships because my dad was a Navy guy. So like, yeah, if I can rise your boat and my boat comes, like, why is it's not a sum all, there's enough of the pie for all of us to get a piece.
Yeah. And we can always make more together, right? If we're in it. It's like the stone soup thing. So what do you do to stay recharged and inspired on days when you're like, I don't even know if I could do anything?
Part of it is understanding where you're at. So a good example is on those days where like, I'm not there. I'm not going to go send emails to people because I know it's not going to come off authentic. It's going to come forced. It's not putting my best foot forward. So why am I going to go ahead and do that? Some people I know are like, just push through it. And I'm like, but they can feel it. Like someone can feel, I believe, can feel your inauthentic energy or your blah energy if you want. So there's always enough things to do in a day that you can go like, all right, where can I channel my energy if my energy right now isn't here? Maybe it's a spreadsheet. It's like, I don't have to talk to anyone and I'm just going to power through a spreadsheet because that's what I have to do. Like, doesn't matter what your role is. There's always something you can figure out where it's like, can I block this? But it's also a feelings thing, right? So maybe in the morning I'm not there, but maybe by the afternoon I am. I've recharged. I don't drink coffee, but maybe you have your cup of coffee, you have lunch, you put some food in your stomach. Who knows? You're like, all right, I can do that now. So just because you're not feeling it at that moment doesn't mean you won't feel it later on that day. So for me, that's kind of the way I treat it. It's like, all right, what could I do now? From a call standpoint, like maybe I'm not in the mood for a call, which isn't possible because I'm always in the mood to talk, but recharging, I mean, like fitness is a big thing for me. I've started learning the art of napping, which is an interesting one. My mother still finds that really odd because I've never been a napper, but you start realizing instead of just pushing through that wall or drinking your cup of coffee, like listen to your body and understand like maybe it's just lay down for 20 minutes. Part of it is also then breathing. So maybe it's just a meditation because I'm so amped. I'm a very high energy person. So sometimes it's like, how do I just ground myself and breathe? And then by doing that, you'll get clarity, go for a walk. Like they always talk about walking as a great form. So like sometimes just getting out from what you have to do helps you bring that clarity. And those are some of the things that I do that always help me, as opposed to, I've got too much. It's like, yes, you will always have too much to do. But if you take time, you realize maybe you'll be able to organize your thoughts better, maybe able to power through what you were originally overwhelmed doing because you've got new clarity on it. If you're always looking at the same thing, it's going to be hard for you to move past it.
Now, often we undervalue I call it back brain work that happens when you're, if you're really pushing on a project or a problem or, we're looking for a solution and you just can't get anywhere. I feel like if I walk away and I let my back brain do its thing, it's got, I don't know, magical fairies and hamsters in there or something, then I come back and the answer is right there. And it probably took me less time than if I sat there kind of trying to force it forward. But sometimes it feels like giving up, like, no, I'm going to win, which, it's not a great attitude, right? And sometimes I feel that pressure of, I have to have a timeline. And you just have to let that go and recognize that time takes time. Like you can't make it happen a specific way. And also accept what shows up. Sometimes the solution isn't what you thought. So I like that. The back brain pause and all the other things too. I think sleep, people are understanding how important it is that you go close your eyes, and we don't really understand what it does except that it is good for us, which I think is also kind of interesting. We spend a third of our life doing it. We still don't really understand much about it.
No, but we're willing to spend $50,000 in a car, but not $2,000 in a mattress.
Right? Humans, we're so interesting.
What gets me from point A to point B and looking good versus what is actually going to be good for my actual health?
I don't know. For folks that are listening and they're just like, well, I want to be a cast magician or I want to know more, what do they do to learn more, follow you, get in touch?
To learn more, clearly go talk to you in terms of, drop your affiliate link in there. Me, I live on LinkedIn. That's where I live. That's where I post. As you know, I live in our Slack community as well. I'm also a member of 40 other Slack communities, but I run ours. But yeah, I run our onboarding. Yeah, no, it's a lot. I run our onboarding. So as soon as you sign up, you want to learn how to do everything, I'll walk you through that. We do weekly workshops. We'll teach you. Once again, it's all community driven. And then I help podcasters and I consult with podcasters because at the end of the day, how do I help you change your mindset? And that's my whole point. Monetization, mindset shifting. Instead of just downloads, how do we actually think about you as a brand? That's kind of what I love Jazz about.
Love it. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today. And thanks everybody for listening.
Pleasure.